Yo, 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 Rush Nation. It is the 2022 draft night. I am joining you with no other than Mr. Brendan Veal for our IDP show. How you doing, Bren? You all pumped for the draft?
Yeah. Get the pot of coffee on. Try
You
and
sound you
try and
sound
sort.
really up for it.
Sorry, I've not long finished work, so no, I'm looking forward to getting up. We touched on it last week, and it's we went sort of back and forth over it a little bit, in so much as, and actually, the more I've sort of listened to a few pods sort of talking about it, I think the fact that there is so much uncertainty around what teams are going to do, certainly in those early picks, and lots of talk about people trading out, as we mentioned last week, and aside from everyone seems sort of fairly set on Trevor Walker going sort of early doors. Outside of that, it's do the Jets go defensive? Are they going to trade out? Are they going to take who's going to take a wide receiver early? How many wide receivers are going to go off?
These are all
I've heard anything
questions.
of, sort of 4 to 10 wide receivers going off, depending on who you listen to. So it's the usual thing. I think it's because it's a bit of a mixed bag, and it's a lot of a lot of edge rushers, a lot of OTs. So
Debo's going to the Jets. They're going to give all their picks away. They say he's just like stupid. But we'll wait and see. I'm looking forward to all of that. I'm open like a lot of people are. I mean, obviously, I see what the Vikings do at 12. For me personally, but there's so much. This draft just sees there's a lot of possibilities of a lot of movement of picks and places and teams setting up for not only this year but definitely next year. I think people are trying to get into position to get what they kind of want. But yeah, I'm really excited. I've done nothing really rookie wise on it. I decided not to earlier on this year concentrate on what we're doing and various other bits and bobs that I'm involved with, and just thought, sod it. I'll wait, see where everyone lands, and then do some work on them rather than really get into the mix of trying to guess everything. Right. So tonight, what are we doing? We are. This is our final week of the 3-week going over our IDP mock draft that we did about a month ago now. So we're going to be going over teams 9 to 12. We've reviewed all the others, the other 8 teams in the last 2 weeks. And we're going to concentrate on those 4 teams and talk about how they picked and what we like, what we don't like, and break down some of the players. I'll tell you now, there's 4 players which we're highlighting to really concentrate on, and they are all DLs of the edge rusher variety. We've got Sam Hubbard, Monte Sweat, Rashawn Gary, and Josh Allen. So they're all 4 interesting chaps for this season, all for very different reasons. So we're going to really deep dive into those guys a bit. So just to go clarify on the IDP mock draft as it is, just go over the settings for that draft. It was 2 QB, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 3 DLs, 3 linebackers, and 3 DBs. It's the fantasy and frame scoring. As you know, that's our selected scoring for this year. Half PPR, Superflex, as I mentioned, the 2 QBs. It's quite interesting. We had guys that played in our fantasy leagues last year. They were involved in the draft. So pretty much everyone is IDP kind of ready. They've all played it. None of them it was their first season, put it that way. So there was some decent picking. A lot of people of the same kind of mindset, maybe, which some of the rosters look remarkably similar in construction. I'll put it that way. So there we go.
Okay.
So right, Brent, you're right to kick it off with the first team. Should I grab them up? I'm donning my. I didn't mention donning my McLaren top this week to podium finish for for us this week with Orlando. Right, let's add this to the stream. Let's get these 4 teams up there. And here they are. Okay. So, anything that jumps out to you straight away, Brendo?
Well, I don't know, we didn't sort of touch on it before we came on, but straight off the bat, is there one in particular that sort of jumps out at you? I mean, I've got...
Yeah, out of the teams.
I think it's one or two for me. I like Team 11, actually. I think 11's arguably sort of...
The most balanced.
Definitely the best balance of the 4.
Yeah. I'd say that's where I was going.
The interesting thing is, I mean, just looking at the teams as a whole from an IDP perspective, I had a quick look on how the various players would have, if you based it on sort of fantasy and frame scoring last season, and it's reasonably close. But Team 11 does finish behind Team 10. But as I said to Nate before we came on, you've got Daniil Hunter in there who only played 7 games, and a big factor in that, I mean, you look at it, and this is something I'll bounce it over to Nate actually, because I know this is something he wanted to, before we dive into those sort of edge rushers he mentioned. One thing that I've highlighted in that is if you look at, there's only sort of, it's not even 100 points between what I think are the 2 best teams, 11 and 12, based on last season's scoring. But if you look at Daniil Hunter over those 7 games, averaging over 15 points per game, you take that across the entire season. And I'll turn this over to Nate, because this was something that we sort of highlighted as something we wanted to talk about, or certainly Nate wanted to mention. And it is that, using that points per game as a sort of a relatively basic metric, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the thing is it's people asking questions around getting into IDP and how they can quickly get rather than just using sleeper. Well, sometimes they can't, because they've got to have to look at their own scoring based on their leagues, and getting that sort of like that value out of players. One of the best ways, I think, quickly to do it, there's loads of metrics that you can look at, whether a player's good in his position, a good fantasy prospect, and all those kind of things. And you can go as deep as you want to. And you can look at everybody, lots of different analysts got very different views on things, and some go into enormous depth. And fair play, kudos to them. But when you've got new players coming in who want to get quite quickly into it and be able to draft and trying to work out where they are, I find the average points per game mark is the way to go for me, which is so simple from the point of when you've got those total points per game and you just divide them up. Once you've got that in front of you, it does automatically give you a bit of a tier. And I can give an example of this kind of tier based on, we've got a spreadsheet that we use in the fantasy frame scoring, which is our points per game, defense to offense metric sheet. And all it is your points, your average points per game, and it's listing every player, offense and defense. And what it does is it quite quickly breaks those guys down. So the top average points per game was from Josh Allen with 24. That was the average points per game. So if you drop that down from, so I've got top tier 1 between 24 and 22, and that is mainly got, it has got a bit of a mixture. It's got Josh Allen, TJ Watts in it, Derrick Henry, Herbert, Brady, Cup, Murray. They're all in that top tier. And Mahomes is just behind Jonathan Taylor, all those kind of players. Alucon's down, it's 18 points per game. But what you're doing is you're quite easily and quite quickly getting yourself maybe a list of about 100. If you go from 24 to 14, that'll give you a list of 100 players who average, their average points were excellent last season. And it just helps you really quickly identify players of need. Obviously, then you start to go into depth of players that you think are going to regress, players that are going to do well in this new year. Then you've got the rookies to come into it. And then you've got lots of things to do with like snap counts and different schemes teams play and all that kind of stuff. But just as a basic average points per game, it does mean something. It does mean something in just getting your foot into the door, in the door, and just getting a ring round those players that you definitely want to target. And what's interesting is you'll find a few of those. You'll find a few players in there that you didn't possibly think that were in there. They might not be the biggest names. And for later rounds, it might help you pick up, if you find out that their status hasn't changed, they're still maybe on the same team in very much the same scheme. It could give you that chance to say, actually, I'm going to pick him up rather than have a pop shot at a different player that I have got no information on, and you can find that quite quickly. So, yeah. So, right, going back over to the teams, Brent, yeah. Should we, who's that for the first, let's go through who he took. His first player off the board, defensive-wise, was Kendricks, and he picked him up reasonably early. I see him taking him pretty much straight after Bosa. And then his next one was Queen. He took him after Nick Bolton. I'm not a massive Patrick Queen fan, Well, I think many of us IDPers are not, because
he got an awful lot of mentions from us during the last regular season, didn't he? And I just, he was one I looked at and I thought, would I have taken him that early? Is he a bit of a gamble? And I know he's still young. I know we've touched on, how decimated the Ravens were by injuries, and more so than a lot of teams. But I said to Nate before, can we pin the Ravens' sort of poor defense last year just on that? Should the other teams had to manage with, not just injuries, but COVID as well? I think this is a big season for Queen. I think I can see why people will pick him up, because there isn't a lot of competition in that position in that Ravens sort of scheme. He will play, but I don't know. I think this is I'm still very much on the fence. I wouldn't have taken him there personally. I still think he's a little bit of a gamble. We do expect the Ravens to be better this season, definitely. But I don't like the pick. Not that early. I'd have taken. Look who went off just after. You got Jock going off after that. There's quite a few players that went after that, round 11, and that I would have taken over him.
He's difficult, Queen. He is a difficult.
But lots of people like him. This is the problem, and we do seem to rag on him quite a bit.
But not many in the IDP circles at this moment in time. And I think the problem is, and it's one. It's like after tonight and after the next few days, we're going to be hot on particular players because they've hit a good landing spot and they've shown their potential like they did in college. And then, you kind of not go all in on them, but you know what I mean? You just sort of like, you plant your flag in the ground and you say, I think this guy's good. And I think he's obviously, he's let a lot of people down. It's just the fact that it just hasn't materialized, the fact that he had such a sort of mixed season last year and just generally just poor play as well, and getting exposed. His weaknesses were really, really highlighted. And the issue that you get with that is it wasn't just poor production. It was visually hard to watch at some stages last season. I just think that the organization at Baltimore will be looking and they will be thinking, I'm sure they're thinking, we've got to cover this off, because if they get a few games in and they actually go, he is definitely not our guy. That's a big gap that is left there. I mean,
they take a linebacker in the draft then?
Well, that you watch if they do, the Patrick Queen, the noise will be quite deafening. I think if that's the case.
He is still young though. I mean, he's 20. Yeah, just turned 23, I think. If that.
It was interesting that when Josh Bynes came in, and it smelt of them sort of not panicking, but they felt that they needed that stability there, Baltimore, because they weren't getting it middle linebacker. And it's just the fact that with Queen, this is the thing. When you've got raw talent and it doesn't pay off, it does leave these teams into some real situations where, they've now got to make this decision. Do they go with him? Do they stick with him? Or do they look in the draft again? Or will they go free agency? Or will they just roll with him? And it's going to be really interesting this year to see what happens with Queen. I mean, if he bounces back and miraculously looks a lot better, and they've solved some of the issues that are obviously there at the back end of last season. If that's the case, there'll be so many people that will be like, I told you he was good, and we'll look forward to that if it comes. And I'm not saying that he's bad. It's just it's just difficult. The opportunity was there last year. The lack of consistency was huge. There were some good plays from Queen, but some absolute shockers.
Yeah, and it's the old adage as well. I mean, as you say, some people rate him as a potentially good NFL player, but we're looking at it from a fantasy and an IDP perspective, and played all 17 games, well over 800 snaps, and I'm looking at the points return and the average sort of PPG and going, no, it's not. It's not there at the moment.
No. But also the issue that you get as well, where I know a lot of people say, sometimes in IDP, don't need to be good players to score well. Yeah, but it
helps.
We've said it before, but this really is still a load of bollocks from that point of view. You've got to look, and they've still got to be decent, because if they're not decent, they're going to get taken off the field. Their snap counts start to drop, and before you know it, you'll be left with somebody rostered who hasn't got a team, and you're like looking at it thinking, you can't go off that. At the end of the day, if he's bad, when we say that about bad players scoring quite well, it's only in certain situations that it sort of like pays off. It won't pay off for very long. You're like, that's just a little of a gap. That's a little.
I think Queen's a prime example. I mean, if they had an alternative there, would he have seen that number of snaps? No. He saw 826 snaps because there wasn't a second option there. So they, like you say, they had to roll with it. If they do it again this season, we'll see. I mean, I scanned through a few of the mocks online before we came on. A lot of people have got Baltimore going in for a cornerback, sort of sure at the secondary.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I think they've got to. I don't think. I think the needs are huge in some areas for Baltimore. I think what happened to them last year in the secondary will mean that they will know that they've that was quite alarming with the amount of players that they had out at particular points in the year, and the fact that they just didn't have the depth there. So even if they pick up lots of depth pieces in the secondary, they'll know they still need one or two real decent ones. So that
yeah.
Well, I think and an edge. I think there's still a need at edge as well for them, slightly as well, but we'll see. Going on, right, moving on from him, then Chyna Jones was picked up. Well, we've spoken about Chandler Jones before, the landing spot at the Raiders, and I'm quite high on it. I mean, he holds some records, old Chandler Jones, and the sacks and the pressure sort of speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's got Max Crosby the other side of him, I just think it's really intriguing to watch this year to see how that all pans out for us from an IDP perspective. Then you've got Zavin Collins. Wow, Zavin Collins. I mean, that is a real tough one. I would love to see anybody in the IDP world really
make a case.
Yeah. Either way, at this moment in time, everyone knows that Zavin Collins. I mean, he wasn't given the opportunity that he really needed, and now, if you think they're going to roll with it properly, and they're going to give it to Zavin Collins and Simmons as well as those two main linebackers, and increase their snap counts and give them that kind of opportunity, it's going to be there to take. I'm sure. look, but again, he's another one that I wouldn't take yet. I just don't. I'm just not big on the Cardinals anyway. Everyone knows that anyway, don't they? That I've got issues with their stability and their outlook and what they do. But this is a big year for the Cardinals. I think there'll be some big changes if this doesn't go well. I think Kingsbury's got. Wow, it'd be really interesting to see this year. If it doesn't go to plan for them, there could be some big changes coming their way because, they've invested a lot of money and a lot of time in putting this together, and it still looks to me that there's not a massive plan in place. Maybe there is, don't know, but
I again, that's another pick, even at 14-4. No, not for me. Like we said, I mean, with Hicks having gone, who sort of came, they rolled with Zavin early in the season. They didn't think he was up to it. He only saw 220 snaps. Hicks isn't there. Isaiah Simmons is going to be the lead out of those two. The Cards do typically play, as you say, with those two sort of linebackers. They did over 70% of snaps last season. So they've got. They're going to. He will. We will see progression from him this season.
I was
because
mad.
I was playing more, but
we so many people in the IDP world were really excited by what the Cardinals looked like, especially at the start of the season as a defense, and they started to, when you look at Chandler Jones, JJ Watt, the secondary with Baker, with Buda Baker, and Isaiah Simmons added to it, and everything. You sort of like, look, this looks exciting. And now I'm not sure where, like, is Marcus Golden going to be a lead edge rusher? Is JJ Watt healthy to be one of the other guy? And it's like, I don't know. I just think all over the place. Secondary was not great.
I remember in the sort of preseason pod we did, breaking down the divisions, and we did quite a bit on the Cards for that reason. But we kept coming back to this defense could be brilliant if it clicked, and if all those pieces slotted in, and if everyone hits the ground running, and you see what I mean? Like, from going back from then to now, where you would have said, okay, fast forward it a year, we would have probably been predicting that we'd have been saying, right, this is the second year with this defense, and it's getting better. Now I'm like looking at it and I'm not quite sure if they're happy at linebacker. I'm not quite sure if they're happy at edge. I'm not quite sure what's going on at corner. And safety's probably the best. But you know what I mean? You're like looking at it and go, I steer clear of Arizona at this moment in time making predictions. They didn't go well last year for us. Yeah. Mind you, you did pick on the Cards a lot last season, but again, I'm doing it again already. I'm doing it in season. I don't mean to be. It's just I don't know. You have to issue an apology about 3/4 of the way through last season to the Cardinals fans that listen to this, because we go, look, we don't. He doesn't mean to pick on him every week, honestly, but you have, we call it as we see it, don't we? So I'd be wary. I'd like to see him do well. I'd like to see that sort of that young linebacker sort of dual threat. It's no good. It's like they're one of those teams though, isn't it? And it's like even at points of the season last year, it's like, oh yeah, they got so many sacks and they seem to get so many pressures, and they lost the game, and you were like, okay, so the defense kind of did its job-ish. In parts of it did. And then it gave away stupid splash plays. And you go, okay, so it's, as a unit, it's a bloody mess. Yeah, they weren't helped by a very erratic. I mean, some of the performances by the offense and Kyler running around, and you go, what are they doing? But and this guy's gone. He's gone Kyler Murray as his QB1, and he's got that's that and he's gone Zavin Collins as well as one of his top linebackers. Who else has he gone for? Let's go. We said about Hubbard. We're going to go into Hubbard in a minute. Yeah. Antoine Winfield Jr. I like Antoine. Yeah, good late pickup. I mean, that's the one thing I do. I like I like the couple of late DB pickups from Team 9.
Yeah.
We like Winfield.
I skipped over Minka as well. I mean, Minka had a hell of a season last year.
I mean, that's the DB pickup. I think you could
very
make
good.
Being the best of the 4 teams.
Yeah.
But elsewhere, the DLs and the line, no, not convinced about that. But I definitely like the Bayards and Winfield sort of late picks. That's
I mean, if you compare his secondary, his DB picks for against what would that be, Team 10? Well, Team 10 is really winging it in a way. From, I mean, I suppose you could say Logan Ryan should be assured, but obviously with him swapping teams to Tampa, we're not quite sure what that really means for him. I think at the end of the day, you would say that his stats you'd have to back his stats and the fact that he's he's an old head in that secondary now, and you would expect him to have some responsibility. The only issue or worry that you'd have is whether the snap count would really start to decrease slightly, and maybe his role might slightly decrease because it does overlap in some instances with some of the other guys, Winfield being one.
I like Ryan, but it's quite funny the way the draft's panned out because they're right next to each other on the draft board. But I don't think you see a massive. Don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting Ryan to drop off a cliff, far from it. But I don't know. I've got this sneaky feel. I mean, I had a very good season last year. But I'm just wondering, will he have another 200+ point? Not, I wouldn't be betting on it.
It's tough when you got a player like that that's a bit later in his career, go into a team like Tampa, who have a lot of often good players at specific positions that are like, they seem to double up a lot, which often, it's not that it can eat into their snap share. It's just their roster at their depth. Some places are like, some people would say, well, why did they need particularly Logan Ryan? Why would they do that? But then they released Jordan Whitehead. So you can possibly see it from that point of view. Then he picked up Tyrann Mathieu. At the moment, we don't know where he's going to end up.
The homeless honey badger.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, another good player. So yeah, he's okay, but we need to see where he lands. And then Micah Hyde, who is, it's good, but it's the DB back there as a corner. Yeah, I don't dislike it, but I just think that Team 9 is stronger. I think Team 10 also at DBs are potentially stronger because they got Poyer. Taylor Rapp's a decent pickup back there. And then what the other Team 12 is Von Bell, who I like. Willis is sound as well. Landon Collins is a little bit of a not sure what's going to quite happen with him yet. So that's sort of DB wise. So go on then. Where are we? Are we going to talk about Sam Hubbard now?
Yeah, can do. Yeah. I don't. Where did he take him? Sort of 15. Yeah.
I know. I like Sam because I like the Bengals edges because it's really interesting to see that you've got a speed guy, and a rusher, an absolute out and out rusher in Hendrickson, who is all about the sacks, and Sam Hubbard, who just racks up tackle after tackle, and it is quite a secure piece in when you're putting together a roster. I like Hubbard for that reason because of his tackle stats and he's sort of like, he's a secure kind of guy. Hendrickson, I just watch him absolutely fly around, half injured, leg falling off or whatever. You know what I mean? Like he was in the playoffs. You just watched him thinking, but he's so important. But between them both, they're cool. I like the Bengals.
Yeah, I think I think that the pickup point is about right. I wouldn't have taken him any. I mean, the only thing I'd like to, and Hendrickson's got to be a factor at the Bengals, but he gets a lot of quarterback pressures, Hubbard. Yeah. 55 last season. I just think, if I'd just like to see him sort of convert one or two more of those into, because based on those pressures, the QB hits aren't quite there for me.
No,
possibly.
But again, I think that's sort of like it just.
But he's in and around it. That's the tricky one.
It's like a bigger guy and a bit more upright than Hendrickson, who's like whip it round the outside. And he actually, if he gets there, he's probably getting the sack. Hendrickson when Hubbard, he's upright. The quarterbacks often gets the chance to potentially get rid of it, and that seems to be the way it goes, or he doesn't quite get there because he's ended up pushing the lineman into the quarterback.
Yeah, and to be fair, as you say, he's a different sort of animal. And I've just pulled up his, the tackle number. I mean, he doesn't miss a lot of games. His tackle numbers have been very consistent over the last 3 years. There's not much sack numbers. Good last year, didn't have a great 2020, but had a good. So he's. I think he's a solid pickup in and around sort of where he went off the board.
Like you said, it's quite consistent sort of numbers really from him. The QB hits, particularly good, kind of good year from that point of view. 2021 was certainly his best, but again, I think that probably goes hand in hand with the with the Bengals becoming a better unit. I mean, he was one of the best defenders in a very poor defense. Before that, obviously before Hendrickson come as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I got no problem with Big Sam. Okay, well with that in mind, why don't we go to Monte Sweat, because he went off quite a bit. He went off before Sam. The previous rounds, and I don't know. I don't. I don't dislike the pickup, to be honest.
My thing was with Monte Sweat, and I don't know how many people will look at this, is the fact that in Chase Young's first year, they looked good as a pair, and then obviously 2021, suddenly you had the injuries to Sweat and you had the injury to Young, obviously. And it changed the face of the Washington defense, which was, one of the top defenses in 2020 and then dropped in 21. And it was, I think there's a number of things, but injuries obviously played their part. But obviously 2020, it was 9 sacks. He had 12 tackles for a loss, 20 QB hits. So, I mean, it was a very productive 2020. And then 2021, obviously, it's 10 games. So, it's less. He still picked up 5 sacks. Tackles for a loss dropped massively down to 3. And it was 13 QB hits. So, they dropped as well. It's difficult. It's difficult to compare, really, because what you can say is that was a banged up front line, really, in 2021. So you're going to say if Chase is fit again, completely fit, but we're not going to know. I just like you said, the issue is it is a little bit of a gamble on value. Where are you getting the value from Monte Sweat? He missed a lot of time. And I know. Actually, towards the back end of the season, I think it was, if I remember rightly, wasn't it his brother? Didn't his brother die or something? Didn't he miss? I can remember something. He missed a portion. He come back and then he missed some more time because he had to, and I'm sure it was something like that. But anyway, I don't dislike Sweat at all. I think he's a decent player and a decent pick and somebody that can definitely get back. The only issue is can he do it without Chase on that other side? And I know you shouldn't do that in a way because everybody's their own player in their own right and all that, but I personally think it does make a difference, and I'm really excited to see the tandems that are formed this year. Like when you think of Joey Bosa going to have an uptick because Khalil Mack's on the other side? Because defense, offensive line have got to play into that. They will do. There will be schemes put together to try and make that less of an impact. And this is the thing: when they had Sweat and Young, it did look really particularly good. So
yeah. Well, it'd be interesting. So moving on to the third player that we sort of highlighted, and he went off the board. And I think this is so Rashawn Gary went off. Team 11 took him, literally the pick before Montez. Now we talked about Gary as someone we really like. We've looked at some of the stats. You're seeing sort of, as Nathan, we'll probably touch on, the numbers are sort of, you're seeing a steady sort of progression in a lot of the figures. 81 QB pressures last season.
Yeah. Not only that, but he turned 20. He got 28 QB hits as well. So so
the conversion rate is good. Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, it's good. And not only is good, so you'll see, what was it? 2019, 16 games played, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, 3 QB hits. So particularly low numbers back then. And then 2020, you're seeing that uptick again, up to 5 sacks. And then 2020 went up to 9.5. But the jump in the QB hits and the QB pressures makes you feel that this is his job now. This is his job. And this is really, really exciting. The fact that Rashawn Gary is now taken over from Zadarius Smith as this rusher, this lead rusher from the Green Bay Packers. And this is so, I can't wait to see him this year, because if he starts, I think we could really be talking about something quite special here with Rashawn Gary. I really, really like him. It's really weird to say from a Vikings fan, but we've probably benefited, but his rise has benefited the Vikings in a way, because that's enabled us to get Zadarius Smith, I think, because I think the Packers have thought, we can let him go because we've got this kid behind who is good, and they've given, it's Preston Smith, they've given him a big contract as well, so they seem to be quite happy all along now. I'm excited to see what the Packers do, and I'm excited to see Rashawn. What do you think, Brad?
Well, exactly that. And in terms of, I'm just looking at, on top of the other numbers and that gradual progression that we've discussed, and the Zadarius Smith sort of situation, sort of moving on. So, you're looking at this guy, and he's still only 24, finished DL 29 with some good numbers. And, like we said, we're seeing that sort of curve. But all good season off less than 700 snaps.
Yeah, there you go. I was just about to say, what was the snap?
So, so that just ties in with everything you've just touched on. That number is going to go up.
Potentially. The thing is if it doesn't go up, we've already seen this progression of a player that is getting there. So you're gonna think that that's going to go up, and if it does, boom, brilliant. But if it doesn't, you've still got somebody that is doing some really good numbers there.
Well, if you pick him up in the 14th round, and he has a similar season, finishes off with just shy of 200 points. It's a worth pickup. But I think everything would point to him breaking. I would imagine he breaks 200 points this season.
But when we talk about when we just talked about Monte Sweat, so Monte Sweat was picked up directly after Rashawn Gary. Now this is the kind of thing which you look at. If you're watching this pod and then you're just about to go into a draft and you've got these two boys that are on your board and you're thinking to yourself, which one do I go for? Well, I'm saying every day Gary, because Gary has got we've got evidence of an uptick. We've got a real chance that he is the guy there as well. This is where a shift seems to have happened in Green Bay, and we've got evidence that we can support that with Monte Sweat. We're actually, the evidence that looking at Monte Sweat is to say that he could actually be regressing, or it could be the fact that because of the injuries, there might even be a problem there. I don't know. And then you've got the thing is, where does he fit with Chase Young? And you know what I'm saying. I just feel that Rashawn Gary is definitely the way to go here. If you're going for those two, right at that same sort of like slot.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Who next?
So and then the last one we'd sort of said we'd highlighted on the sort of deals on the edges, Josh Allen.
You're not massive on him, are you?
Eh?
You're not huge on Josh Allen.
I just wonder whether. I mean, part of me, I'm a little bit torn with this because I'm thinking, well, he had a good season, so
yeah.
Why hasn't someone taken him earlier? He's gone off the board, first in the 16th round.
I think.
What did he finish? I mean, DL 14, averaged 12 points a game. I mean, he was knocking on 200 points, 7.5 sacks. All right, there was all that talk and hype about him sacking his namesake, and the stat monkeys went mental about it. But I don't know. Would he? I think for everything, a lot of hinges on sort of what the Jags do, sort of going into this season. Can he replicate that again this season? I don't know. I'm just a little bit. I am surprised he went that late. I really am. I would have expected someone to take him, 2 or 3 rounds earlier, or when a few more of the DL started coming off the board, based on last season's numbers. But I just wonder whether some of the other players in the draft were looking at it, thinking the same thing. Can I sort of bank on him? Have we seen Josh Allen's ceiling in sort of 21? I don't know. It's silly to say because but
his ceiling was. It's got to be his rookie. It's 2019, isn't it? I mean, comes out of the blocks like something special. I like Josh Allen. I just think, and I feel that he could be one of these players that is really going to benefit from a better defense. And I think that the Jags are getting a bit better as a unit. I think they're getting better. I think they've got a better idea of what they want to look like now. Certainly Spencer, they just went mental in free agency. So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they do in the draft. If they go Hutchinson, does that change anything for Josh Allen? As in, does it suddenly mean that that he's actually going to get more? It's difficult. It's difficult to even look at shit like that.
No, it is, and if you're looking at the bookies saying, well, Trevor Walker's about the most sort of nailed on pick to go off first for the Jags at sort of DL, then
no, it won't be. It'd be Hutchinson. It'd be Hutchinson going one. Yeah, absolutely. Hutchinson will go one, and he'll go there. I don't think there's any mix there. I personally, that's me personally. I just think that's how it'll go. I don't think Walker will go off one.
So, well, that's interesting. So, assuming you're right, and Hutchinson does, so what?
Like, this is somebody who so say has done nothing on the draft. I haven't done completely nothing on the draft, but you can't do nothing. I can't get away from.
No, I mean, and the Trevor Walker comment is purely based on pods I've been listening to, sort of about the draft, walking the dogs from quite a wide spectrum, and it just a lot of the noise was about him sort of going number one.
I think it's Hutchinson for the Jags, and I think it suits. He potentially suits them as well. But I don't know. They've got different. Like I said, different people got different ideas. I don't think they can. I don't think they can pass on this talent. That's the thing that. Yeah. For me, it's Hutchinson one.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think the players right from a lot of people may say, they need a bit more stability and a difference between a big school and a slightly smaller school or whatever.
Well, if they bring another sort of edge in, then and he does hit the ground running, given the the talent that everyone knows he's got, then
Uptick for Josh. That's what I would say. Because I mean, I think from that point of view, then you like look at it just means that Jags as a defensive unit can start to actually get some serious pressure, not just in games where it all sort of like clicked from last year. Because they did have some stupid games where they really. How many? Didn't he have one game where he had? I'll have to look at the stats with Josh Allen, but he had one game. Didn't he have like 3 sacks in one game or something like that? Might have been more. He had one week that was mental. I'm sure he did. They're not in front of me now.
No, I'm just looking down.
I should open Sleeper, but
I
can't be bothered. I'm drinking steady wine, trying to get myself into some pace before the draft. Lazy stats. Let's have a look.
No, I mean he definitely had a couple of.
I'm sure he did.
He had 2 sacks against Seattle in week 8. He had a couple against Colts in the last sort of final.
Was it? Yeah, the Colts. Wasn't it the Colts? Who did they beat? Was it the Colts they beat? I thought the Jags turned somebody over. Didn't they turn the Bills over? Was it the Bills? Who did they beat? They beat somebody, which was a shocker. And I thought Josh Allen had an absolutely outstanding game. Unless I was bloody... I can't remember. Who did you say he got his sacks against? This is great. This is sorry, people. This is great TV.
He's just thrown this in. Yeah, he had
it's draft night. You should bear with. This is the shape of shit to come. People talking absolute crap for absolute hours, and then eventually a pick gets made, and then they speak 25 minutes.
Fall asleep round 7 after watching it all again in the morning. yeah, with a load of nachos. Wake up with a load of nachos in your face. Yeah, because it might have been that Buffalo game. I mean, he only had 1 sack on the game, but that was the sack on Josh Allen, wasn't it? Was that week?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Maybe that's why I can remember it. I can just remember it being, a big performance though by them, and it was just the day that they seemed to start to get some pressure. But then, like the week after, or the week before, it was awful. So yeah, hopefully they will sign somebody, and I hope to see a real good Jags side this year. I know they've they like I said, they went a bit mental in free agency, but honestly, for players like Josh Allen and players that have that arrived at the organization before all this was sort of like put together, really. I think it'd be nice for them to actually see some uptick in performances as a whole, and I think it'll benefit Josh Allen. I really do. I just think a better Jags will better benefit him. You know what I mean? I don't think he's the kind of player that is going to do particularly well on a bad team, just because it's that kind of momentum when they start getting going. And Josh Allen's one of those kind of players that does like to beat his chest and does like to get fired up. And I think that's the kind of guy he is. And I'd like to see him in a good defense again.
Yeah, no, they're definitely sort of heading in the right direction, as you say. So, okay. So that's the 4 sort of main DLs we've covered off. Go back to the teams, because we were saying like the layout of some of these guys.
We
jumped around a little bit, so apologies for that. I mean, Team 12, I've kind of skipped over a little bit because they've gone a little bit AWOL with the roster.
They've only got one.
They've only got one DL, and that is the guy we've just talked about. I don't know what. They took a 3rd QB, didn't they? They took Wilson.
So Jamin Davis is a really interesting prospect, isn't he? Maybe they've been listening to the hype and the fact that Jamin Davis is going to maybe turning up as an outside linebacker this year, and maybe used from the edge. I mean, I don't see it. I think that Jamin Davis has still got I still think he's got a chance, a shot at being one of the middle linebackers. And like I said to you last week, I would worry about Holcomb. It's a risk for Holcomb.
Yeah.
Long term risk. I'm not saying don't pick Holcomb up, because I would in drafts. I'm just saying in some of my dynasty pieces that I've been writing of late, he's one of the guys which I do worry about slightly, because I'm not sure whether Holcomb is completely nailed down the job. And with somebody like Jamin Davis, who was somebody I was high on, and I still am high on. So, yeah, I'm not doing the whole, I was high on him last year, so now he's shit. You know what I mean? I know. I was listening to Tom Kissimbri on the Read and React podcast the other week, and it was really funny because he mentioned, you know, when you start the line, I was really high on him and last year. That is like, it's virtually like putting that layer in. So he wasn't very good. You know what I mean? That is, you might as well just say he's not very good, or it didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to pan out.
Well, Tom's normally not that. That's quite diplomatic, actually.
Yeah. Well, I know exactly what he means, though, because when you start that line, I was high on him last year. You usually mean that he didn't do anything much, and now I'm not so high on him, and I'm hoping that I still think that he might be doing something.
It's when you open a conversation by going, I don't want to be rude, but
yeah, I'm
gonna be. So,
yeah.
Just what else we got on Team 12? Kazir White, new fit at the Eagles. I'm not overly sure about.
I mean, like, I like to talk about the Eagles. You know, I do. Not because they're particularly a great defense. I just think that they are a team that have made some advances in their defense from the middle part of last season. Suddenly they seem to have sorted out the linebacker side of things, or have a plan with the linebackers sort of things when they realised that Singleton wasn't the guy. Now they've signed Kazir White. I think it's such an upgrade. It's great in coverage, Kazir White. I know he used to be what was it, a safety cornerback. So yeah, he's experienced in that coverage side of things, and yeah, he's a real good piece to add to. If anything, you would say about TJ Edwards, which I've seen, is maybe he isn't the most flashiest mobile. He could be criticised potentially of not being the best in coverage. From being the most athletic, maybe just outside. I do still think he is an athletic linebacker, but it's just, he's not the Kazir White type that can absolutely fly all over the place. So I think there's potential there for that tandem. Another one that I'm really excited to see. So I like Kazir White, and I like anybody that takes a punt on Kazir White. I don't think he'll be the guy. I think he will be the other guy in the 1-2 linebackers, the more coverage guy. That doesn't mean that, again, we're talking about a coverage guy over your more traditional middle linebacker who just racks up tackles and is mainly stopping the run. That's not how things work nowadays. And often your coverage guy can rack up as many, if not more points, depending on exactly how the game plans out. And I think there's points to be had for both Kazir White and TJ Edwards. Well, if you look at Singleton's points last year and TJ Edwards' points last year, and even Davion Taylor when he did play, I mean, all of them racked up some decent points. I think as a linebacker unit, like it.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, even if that sort of tandem sort of situation at the Eagles sort of nibbles into his points, but even if you saw a little bit of a drop off, either on his snap count was high at the Chargers last year. But, he finished with 242 points last season, sort of linebacker 12. So you think, well, actually, where he's gone off the board, even if he has a slight regression, and there's nothing to suggest it's going to be anything dramatic. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I mean. I think you look at it as a linebacker room. I know it's difficult from a fantasy perspective when you say how much playing time is he actually going to see. Well, you're not going to be able to predict that yet. He hasn't even played a game for the Eagles. I mean, come on, let's be realistic. You can't go off what he did for the Chargers, and you can't even go off what the Eagles did last year because it's a different group of players now, and it's a different. The Eagles are a different team moving forward. They are a different team. They're going to be a different outlook this year, and I'm excited to see Kazir White there.
Who else did they say?
Gruger Hill.
Gruger Hill, yeah. We actually he took before White, despite finishing at sort of linebacker 20. But
what do you?
I'll tell you. Well,
do you know much at the moment about the old Texans setup? Do you think Kirksey, Gruger Hill, they've been re-signed, and I know they racked up points. Not particularly great linebackers. I quite like Gruger Hill though.
Again, going back to what we said earlier in the pod, I mean, you're looking at. I mean, is anything going to change that radically at sort of Houston in terms of sort of the linebacker situation?
No.
Not sure, really. It doesn't. There's nothing so far to suggest that's the case. They've got lots of other issues to sort out when it comes to the draft, and you are looking at a player like you were doing a bit on earlier on. Over 15 points per game.
I mean, they are probably one of the teams where you may say, linebacker-wise, potentially that probably is an area which they actually might not do anything with. They might just re-sign everybody and concentrate on all those other areas of need that they've got, and there's a bloody bag full of them. So, yeah, if they do that, you could say, well, Gruger Hill's in for exactly the same as last year, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit more settled in that position. I'd
put him on a par with someone we mentioned. What was it? Sort of week one of going over the draft. Someone like a Bobby Okereke or something like that. You kind of know what you're not expecting anything sort of no dramatic upticks, but you think they're going to be there or thereabouts. So if I'm picking them up at sort of rounds 12, 13, 14, I'd be quite happy with that. Yeah. Absolutely.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I'm like, I think it's interesting what you said with Okereke as well, because I think it is one of those linebackers that actually it hasn't potentially that linebacker room may not have even been touched. So you go, okay, so everything else that does mean the organization is quite secure with it, or thinks that is better than other areas of need. So from that point of view, you can make a better prediction on that than maybe some of the others, which are new people in new places, which is a lot more difficult to do.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, we've got Roquan. We don't need to say anything about him. Sort of team 12. So that's kind of it for 12. So most of the teams. Is there anyone else you want to sort of pick up on, or any picks that sort of?
The Nick Bolton thing's an interesting thing. I was massively high on Nick Bolton coming in last year, and it's not that I don't think Nick Bolton's particularly. It's interesting. I just feel that Nick Bolton's going to regress slightly because his conversion rate was particularly quite good, and I just feel that. Yeah. I don't know. The Chiefs are a dangerous team defensive wise in IDP to invest anywhere, particularly if you think of all of their players that they've got. Nick Bolton may be the one guy at the moment that sits top of the tree from anybody. That you'd look at as you look at Spags and exactly what they do. I mean, they do this. I mean, they were absolutely dog shit for a lot of the season, weren't they, the Chiefs? And then they kind of got it together towards the end. I don't know. I'm not sure about Nick Bolton taking him too early on in drafts. Yeah. Not yet.
It's well, I mean, another one. I mean, staying with Team 10, I'm not keen on. I'm just not keen. Sort of generally is their pick at 13, which is Devon Bush.
No.
I mean, you think. I mean, and look. I mean, we touched on Bobby Okereke. I mean, he's taken Devon Bush before Okereke. He's taken him before Jerome Baker. I know Bush had a decent sort of rookie season in sort of 2019, but I've looking at stats. He's not kicked on from there really. And he's
something about Devon Bush is like it's like one of those players. Isaiah Simmons has become one of those as well, where it's sort of like he seemed to be cool to talk about a little bit, and it was cool to like Devon Bush, and he was the kid that looked like he was going to be something real special. And do you know what? Nah, for me, I just
I mean, in that sort of, that dual linebacker scheme at the Steelers as well, and it's just I just for me the tackle numbers aren't there from a fantasy perspective.
No.
I don't see anything to suggest that I'm just not keen on him. I just don't,
I don't like, when you get players that are just kind of feel like they're cool for no real apparent reason. You haven't really seen anything on paper to say that, okay, that's why you really should rate him. Devon Bush fits into that category for me. Is somebody that I just go, why? What?
Yeah,
why? Why was he so?
Yeah. And I'm just picked on him to sort of go against that particular grain. But I have sort of sat here and gone.
Do you agree with me on that though? Do you agree with I don't know why Devon Bush is, because he's also still got a lot of truthers. There's still a lot of people out there that think that Devon Bush is still going to be something special, and I'm like, yeah,
well, he's all right, but. Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I did scribble a few notes down about him in the build up to this, and it wasn't. I wasn't really thinking about that. I was just, I picked a few of picked a few of the players almost not at random, but I'm thinking, yeah, all right, what have you got? What's there in the stats to suggest that I would have taken you over a Jerome Baker or a Bobby Okereke or just a few others that were still on the board at the time, and I just looked at it and went. Yeah, I mean, your tackle numbers are, they're okay. The snap count is okay, but all the stats were just, it's okay. So if that's what you want from that particular pick, you go, but I can't see anything to point towards an uptick, because whether it's the numbers that he's putting up, or the snap count, or the Steelers scheme as a whole. I
just think that there's also, because of the movement around the organization's view of their whole linebacker core, which I'm not excited with it. I'm not a Miles Jack fan, far from it. I understand why people may say that he could be a decent pickup. It does depend on where you get him. But then also, you're talking like 3-4 years ago that he was really any good. For me, the interesting thing is like the Schobert thing, that Joe Schobert's been released as well. You know what I mean? Where you like look at it and go, it's all a little bit of a mess. And and Bush is just there now as the guy that I think they were going to pin their hopes on, and now they're wondering what the hell to do. I don't know. No, just doesn't. You know what I mean? And looking at him as is some kind of player that could. I don't know. Like you said, but he's gone off at the right level there. He has gone off at the right level. I'm not knocking the level where he's gone off.
It's not like they've taken him and straight after a Nick Bolton or round 10 or anything daft like that. But I mean, another little interesting one, just dropping down 2 picks from that, Demario Davis.
Mate, there's a flip side from a Devon Bush thing. Maybe not a sexy pick from that point of view. But I'll tell you what.
I looked at those two straight sort of back to back, and I went, hang on.
Demario's.
Why have you taken him over Davis? Because I mean, he was lucky to, in a way, to pick him up at 15. But you go, all right, he's just turned 33, but you're picking him up 2 rounds later, and he's still going to be for me, unless they change anything. I'm not sure they will. Unless the Saints do something, potentially he's still going into the season, even at 33, in that sort of lead linebacker role for New Orleans.
I know. The Pete Werner thing's a thing. I mean, we've seen splashes to say that Werner's going to get that job and take it over, and you've got Zach Bourne as well, who again, some people, I'm awaiting. I'm
done picking Zach Bourne. I've picked him a few times, and it's just, and I'm one of those people. I'm kind of done with Zach. He's not. I just don't see it happening.
No, I don't. I know what you mean, but it's just the thing is Demario Davis is still there, and he's still, if he's there, he's that kind of guy that just seems to be wanting to be on the field, and if he wants to be on the field at whatever age he is, I just feel that he's when you're talking about picking players as well, from a linebacker perspective, where you want tackle numbers and you want, if that guy's on the field, he's a bloody good safe bet from that point of view. And I know people say, "Oh yeah, but he's getting older and he's regressing." Really?
It's and you've made several very good points about it. That doesn't necessarily always apply to certain positions, like a lead linebacker. He's sort of grown into it, and at 33, and his snap count's over 1,000 last season. He wants to be on the field, like you say.
Exactly.
And given the alternatives there, you're looking at it. You've just mentioned two of them straight off, and you just think, well, it's a no-brainer. He finished linebacker 16. Good average the game.
You're not going to gamble on him to arrow up from what he did last year. You're not, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't. But what
leapt off the board at me, because I'm going, hang on.
Yeah.
That difference, you've got quite lucky for that to come back around sort of and pick him up 2 rounds later when you've prioritised sort of a Devon Bush over him.
But at this moment in time, what you would say is his floor is secure. That's what I would say at this moment in time. His floor is kind of secure. Okay, there isn't a massive ceiling there when there could be out of one of the other linebackers, but his floor is nowhere to be seen, because his floor is 0, because you know what I mean? Jamin Davis is a great example coming along the next line, and you think, oh, I don't know. I really don't know. And I like Jamin Davis, but I don't think, depending on where you are and what you're doing, if you've already got your pieces in place, but looking at this guy, right? So he's got Micah Parsons, Nick Bolton, Devon Bush. And then he's gone to Demario Davis. Well, he's taking Micah Parsons at DL. So he's playing him at DL, which is fine. So you've got Nick Bolton, Devon Bush, Demario Davis. Well, out of those 3, Demario is probably my most securest floor. And that sounds awful against Nick Bolton, but I'm probably a bit harsh on him slightly. But if he wasn't at the Chiefs. But anyway. Right, so what else we got to cover off, Bren?
I don't know. I think
we had some questions, didn't we? From
we had a cut. We've sort of left that to the end because I
mixed it up this week, not intentionally.
So, no, he didn't tell me about it, but just keep me on my toes. It's a good job I'm not on the red wine at the moment. Right, so we'll keep it a little bit brief because we're sort of a bit tight on time, but. So when we had come through, to what extent should I factor in the fixtures for the coming season? Now, that was kind of a general question. So I've sort of looked at it from, the schedule for the coming season is what it is. So, you can't be too worried about.
What do you reckon they're talking? They're talking about.
They didn't sort of qualify it. So do they mean, should I be looking at the fixtures for the coming season when drafting, or should I be looking at it more general? So I'm going to take it. They mean bye weeks for a draft. I would assume so, because the thing is, the only thing you can say from a draft perspective, and a lot of people would advise, the one main reason to look at the schedule would be if you're targeting a few top players, and this is regardless of whether it's IDP or your offensive player or whatever. Just keep an eye on the bye weeks, because you don't want to be taking sort of too many top players. If you've got it's you can't do anything. You are going to have multiple players off on bye weeks.
You've got to go.
Avoid is having two. You don't want 2 or 3 top or stud players being out for the same week, because that will hurt.
At the end of the day, talent over everything. But then when you start delving into it, you're still not going to, like in a super, it's exactly the same. Obviously, it's exactly the same in offense. In a Superflex league, you're not going to want both QBs out on the same bye week. not particularly, because obviously, and for example, your backup QB, if he's on the same bye week as well, you're really struggling on that. You're struggling that week. So there's that element to look at it, but really, it's not it's not massive. It's not massive unless they are all on the same bye week.
Yeah,
and then you're just giving a week away.
Yeah, I think. I mean, looking at if you're taking the questions as general, I mean, during the rest of the season, I guess, I mean, you do need to keep, and I mean, again, just trying to turn it back over to just the defensive side of it. So, I mean, even for sort of rookie players, you do want to be looking, 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line, because, it might influence you on, things like the waiver wire and stuff like that. But, you're always, from an IDP perspective, me and Nate sort of mentioned this week in, week out in the matchups, and we did last season. You are always trying to target, look that little way down the road for potential matchups against either rookie or sack happy QBs or dodgy O lines, or usually both. They tend to go hand in hand. So generally sort of week to week, that's why you'd be sort of looking. You can't get too preoccupied with, and that is the danger. You're so focused on who am I playing this week? What do I do about him? What do I do about that? So I would always have one eye on, the upcoming fixtures, but
not from a drafting perspective, and
no.
It's something to bear in mind, but it's certainly nothing that it's nothing that really influences me massively.
No, so keep an eye on it, but don't get your knickers in too much of a bunch. Concentrating on it. And last question for this week. Like I said, we'll keep it fair.
3-2.
Afraid so. Well, how long have we been on now? Should I approach trading and or free agency pickups any differently, purely from an IDP perspective? It's a bit of a tricky one, but any thoughts on that?
Again, comparing with offense, the thing is, I think we've touched on it in previous pods when we're talking about understanding the value of IDPs, especially when trading them with offensive players. I think it's important to get your league and people that are playing in your league au fait with it. Get them updated. If you're setting up an IDP league on your own, and you've picked your own scoring setup or whatever you've picked, you need to make sure, really, as a good commish, that everybody's sort of educated and understands the value of the players that are in the league. Because if you don't, then I guarantee you're going to be a bit of a one-season wonder, because a lot of people will eventually go, I don't get it. There's no point in playing a game if half of the people on the pitch don't get the game. That's that. You know what I mean? It sounds simple, but you wouldn't believe how many people in the IDP world are doing that. I've got in some leagues and I've gone, fucking nobody. I've watched it already, and nobody's understanding the value in it, and it's because it hasn't been put in front of their face. Which it depends on who you're playing with. If I'm playing with, two guys from the IDP podcast, IDP guys podcast, and a few guys from here and a few guys from there, and all in the IDP world, okay, I would expect all of those guys to do their own homework and to really look at it. But if I'm setting up a league where I'm just randomly trying to get people involved in IDP, and I'm not really letting them know what the value is and understanding of everything, then I don't personally think I'm doing my job as a commish. There you go. So that, you know what I mean? I just feel that people should try and get people to understand. And maybe it's just a spreadsheet. If it shows you offensive players against defensive players, even if it's just their points per game in the previous season rankings and stuff like that, but something to help people understand and feel confident when trading and picking up players. I mean, Sleeper have helped no end, mind, and at other formats, not just Sleeper, but I just make it that Sleeper have made it really quite easy for people to adapt to different leagues, different scorings, and find some value by just using their settings and looking through the players that are available and how they did last year.
Yeah. No, makes sense. So that's it for the Q&As this week.
Grand.
We kept it a little bit tight because we just felt, I mean, we'd done quite a bit on the questions sort of early doors in the last 2 weeks. Maybe not had left ourselves enough time to sort of delve into some of the players and the picks. So we've, over the 3 weeks, we just tried to, as Nate said, mix it up a bit. And we thought this week we'll spend a bit more time sort of delving into some of the players, being a bit more specific on that, who went off where, etc. So that's it. That wraps up our mock draft. So time for the main event in a few hours, I guess.
Absolutely, mate. I don't really think so. I think we've kind of covered everything off that we need to cover off. Just mainly there's so much going on in the 5-yard community at the moment. I'm sure after the draft it's going to be and tonight I know there's a few things going on. We've got our dynasty guys making absolute waves at the moment. Some great pods that they've put out. Obviously, with all the rookies coming out, there'll be Rich and Liam are doing their rankings and arguing with each other over the pre-draft rankings and what it be the
draft night. You reckon?
Yeah, I don't know, but it'll be, and then it's going to be the post-draft rankings because they're all, I'm looking forward to seeing all of that stuff. Obviously, with the main show, Murph and Dan doing an absolute cracking job like normal, and it's all really good stuff. Had some absolute banging guests on of late. We've got so many new writers that have joined the group, which is absolutely great to see. And we have one of those coming on next week. Luke Renton is joining us, and he's going to be going over the rookies and where they've landed and telling us his view on those guys and what they are. We'll be providing the feedback on the teams that they've landed and whether those teams are, potentially really, really good fits for those players. So yeah, we're looking forward to next week, and we're looking forward to the draft tonight. And yeah, here we go. So guys, thanks for tuning in, and remember, keep rushing.